episode Turtle Boy is one of the most beloved by Bluey fans, mainly because it introduces an amazing brand new character, Douggie. But did you know that this little boy, who only appeared a single time in the entire series, actually has a very sad story? Unlike most characters in Bluey, who can hear and speak with ease, Douggie is unable to do either of those things because he's deaf. He was most likely born with a hearing impairment or lost his hearing very early on. Since the poor kid can't even speak, Douggie needs to use sign language to communicate, and he can only understand what others are trying to say when they also use sign language, just like his mom does when talking to him. In the future, he might learn to read lips to understand people more easily, but even so, it's nowhere near the same as being able to hear others normally. Douggie will never have what most people consider a normal life, and he'll have to learn to accept that. If he has ever heard anything in his life, it must have been so long ago that he probably doesn't even remember it anymore. And this is the reality for many children and adults in real life, which makes this character incredibly important. He deserves to appear again to bring even more representation to the show. But while that doesn't happen yet, how about we tell you everything about the sad story behind Douggie? Stay tuned, because another Cinewave full of new stuff is starting now. No friends. In Turtle Boy, we see Douggie always going to the playground with his mom, just like Bingo goes there with Bandit, but at different times of the day. However, something raises a big question. Douggie never brings any friends to the park and plays only with his mom. Does this mean he doesn't have any friends his age? Well, Bingo also goes to the park only with her dad, but we know she has friends because we follow her in other episodes, where she plays with her classmates and Bluey's classmates. But since this was Douggie's only appearance, all we know about him is what we saw here. Yes, he might play with other kids at other times, but if that were the case, wouldn't the show have shown it? What it really seemed like was that the show wanted to imply that this little pup lives a pretty lonely life, and that this moment playing at the park with his mom is one of the only bits of fun he gets. After all, his mom must also have responsibilities. Bandit only has time to take his daughter out because he works from home, and that's not the case for every parent. Bingo! Fortunately, there's a very good chance that Douggie might get a new friend very soon, Bingo herself. After all, they play at the same park. The only difference is the time. But that difference is actually tiny, because Douggie arrives right after Bingo leaves. It's only a matter of time until Bingo ends up going to the playground a bit later than usual, or Douggie goes a bit earlier, which would finally make them meet and play together. Something that would definitely spark the beginning of a new friendship that would be wonderful for both of them. It would make perfect sense for a Season 4 episode to finally make this meeting happen, since fans have been waiting for it ever since Turtle Boy was released. Not to mention that it fits perfectly with the show's style to highlight a friendship between a hearing child and a hearing impaired child, showing how both of them learn to communicate with each other. We've already seen a language barrier being overcome by the friendship between Bluey and Jean-Luc, who speaks only French, so it would be just as beautiful to see the same thing happen with Bingo and Douggie. Can you imagine how adorable it would be to see Bluey's little sister learning sign language to talk to her new friend? Many fans even believe that this friendship between Bingo and Douggie could eventually grow into a crush when they're older, becoming Bingo's most popular ship. It would honestly be really cute to see them as a couple in a future set episode. If you agree, comment down below. #Douggie. Tragic fate. Dougie's life has a tragic side and a hopeful side, as we've seen, but the tragedy surrounding this little boy might be far worse than we could ever imagine, depending on the origin of his hearing problems. In case you didn't know, some of the possible causes of deafness are brain infections. His disability may have appeared because of some virus Douggie might have caught in the past, maybe something passed on by his mother while he was still developing inside her womb. This kind of thing is extremely dangerous, and even when someone survives it, it's almost impossible to come out without any long-term consequences. Deafness is one of the possible after effects, so it's easy to imagine Douggie as a child who suffered a brain infection and only survived after going through a very complicated surgery that ended up taking his hearing. That makes his story incredibly emotional, because it means we're talking about a true survivor. However, what if he hasn't completely gotten rid of the infection? When it comes to this kind of dangerous illness, there's always the possibility that the infection only weakened temporarily, so Douggie might very well still be fighting this illness. That would be awful, because it would mean the little boy is still at risk. Maybe he'll only be able to survive for a few more years, and if the show ever confirms this, Douggie would officially become the most tragic character in all of Bluey. Family connection. Another very likely possibility is that Douggie actually inherited his hearing impairment from a relative. This would be a less tragic scenario and also makes a lot of sense, since more than 50% of childhood deafness cases are caused by genetics. So there's a good chance that little Douggie has a relative who is also deaf, maybe his father, a grandfather, or someone else in his family. And if we think about it carefully, it could even be his mother, who is introduced along with him in the show. After all, even though Dougie's mom can speak, she is only ever shown talking to him, who communicates through signs. At no point do we see a scene where she actually needs to listen to anything. Keeping that in mind, Dougie's mom could very well be deaf. The difference is that she knows how to speak, which means she may have developed her deafness after learning to speak. Or perhaps she isn't completely deaf. At the very least, this would mean that the young boy wouldn't be in danger of losing his life, and it would also mean Douggie has people like him to guide him through his journey. Homeschooled? There are other questions about Dougie's life that the Turtle Boy episode didn't address, but that are very important. For example, where does this boy go to school? Douggie seems to be the same age as Bingo, which means he has every reason to study in the same class as her. But that's not the case. Bluey's little sister has several nice classmates, but sadly, Douggie isn't one of them. So where does he study? Some people believe the boy is actually homeschooled. It would be complicated for him to study in a regular school while having hearing issues. For some families, it's easier to hire a teacher who knows sign language to teach their little one. After all, he would need to be accompanied by someone who understands sign language to translate everything that is said during classes. And that's why he might never have managed to form a friendship. If it's already hard for someone who can't speak or hear to make friends, imagine how much harder it is when that person doesn't even meet other children. School isn't only good for learning subjects like math, it's also essential for helping kids interact with others their age, which teaches them how to build strong and meaningful friendships. Ever thought about always having new animation content on your feed? Just subscribe and hit the bell. Special school. If Douggie doesn't study at home, we can also consider the possibility that he studies at a school made specifically for people with hearing impairments, something that exists in real life. At these schools, teachers know how to communicate using sign language, or at the very least, are accompanied by someone who does. We don't even need to explain how this option would be much better for Douggie than homeschooling, right? It would mean the little boy gets to know other kids, and even better, other kids just like him. And if Douggie really studies at a school like that, the show should definitely make an episode focusing on it, to show how this type of special education works. Bluey has all the sensitivity needed to approach this in a meaningful and educational way. So if there's one kids show that could explore a topic like this, it's definitely this one. On top of that, it would be fantastic to meet Dougie's classmates. Another thing the show has already done is give attention to a teacher. Calypso even has an episode centered on her. So it would be really cool if an episode about Dougie's school were told from the perspective of a new teacher learning how to work with deaf children, for example. Going even further, it could be about Calypso herself starting to teach at this school. Many teachers work in multiple schools, so this idea is far from impossible. Bingo's school. But what all of us are definitely waiting to see is Douggie studying at the same school as Bingo. We could never count how many people dream of seeing this little boy attending school alongside Bluey's younger sister, and other kids like Lila and Missy. It would be the first time he'd be placed to interact daily with kids who are the same age as him, but who don't share his disability. This would be challenging for both Douggie and the other kids, who would have to think of ways to include him in their games. Maybe that's where Douggie and Bingo's friendship would truly begin to blossom, and he would also end up becoming a great friend to everyone in the class. From that point on, we would see Douggie together with the other children in every episode where they hang out to play or attend some sort of party. No dad? A real unanswered question about Dougie's life is his dad, because we didn't see him in the episode where the boy was introduced, and it wasn't due to a lack of opportunity, you know? He could have taken Douggie to the playground, but we only saw his mom. Well, just like the theory that Douggie has no friends, we can say the reason might simply be that the episode chose not to show his dad. After all, Bingo only goes to the park with her own dad, and that's far from meaning she doesn't have a mother. However, here's the thing. The show knows we're already familiar with Bingo's family, but it also knows we know almost nothing about Dougie's life. So there should be some extra effort to show a bit more about the people around him. Unless, of course, Dougie's dad didn't appear because he doesn't have a dad at all. And if we remember a few things we mentioned earlier, we realize there might be a dark reason behind this. We theorize that Douggie became deaf after surviving an infection, and we also theorize that, instead of that, he may have inherited deafness from a family member. But what if there's a third option? He inherited a dangerous infection from his father, an infection that took the father's life and took the son's hearing. Sad, right? Take the chance and watch the 2 videos we left on the screen. I'm sure you'll have fun. See you soon.